My name is Naima Cochran. I am mostly known right now as a music and culture writer and historian, but for most of my career, I was an entertainment industry executive. I am still an artist manager in addition to writing about Black music and culture and also researching and archiving Black music and culture. And there is a framework that I want to quote her name correctly. Give me a second. I'll find it. But anyway, there's a framework of roles that you can put in process during a social change ecosystem. And one of those roles is storyteller. So as we are facing this current time of change and upheaval, not just with the protests, but even prior to this with COVID-19, when I was trying to figure out what my role looks like in terms of providing help and being impactful and affecting change, I knew that somehow it had something to do with telling the story and disseminating information and helping provide perspective and context. Context is my favorite word. So as Liz and I were speaking about what today could look like for us, and she really left it totally up to me, but I wanted to do something that was also organic to her platform that you guys are used to, and Liz herself is a storyteller and a journalist and a content creator. What I do on Twitter is my primary platform, is really always try to provide some framing. Like Liz said in her introduction of me, I'm born in New York. My parents are from New York. I was raised in South Carolina, and then I've been back in New York my entire adult life. So I have two very different perspectives of how race relations work, of how blatant versus microaggressions show up, blatant racism versus microaggressions. For me, I grew up in the South in a time when the rebel flag was still flying on top of the Capitol building, and I am an alumnus of the University of South Carolina, and we still didn't have MLK Day off, while most of the country did. So, there's that perspective. And also, like, my high school mascot was a Confederate general, and the street that the high school was on was named after him, as was pretty much everything else in the surrounding area. But in New York, it's not that there's less racism, it's just that it manifests in a different way. But ultimately, the thing that is different about New York is that there is such an amalgamation of cultures. And what I find is that sometimes your inherent bias is not even intentional. It's just about ignorance or the reality. And people think that ignorance is a negative word. It just literally means you don't know. And it is just about not having taken a moment to consider another perspective in a genuine way, right? So in terms of art and music and literature, what that looks like is, yeah, we all have different, genres of everything, of media, of music, that is geared towards certain target demos, who the content is made for, meaning made by those writers, creators, from that point of view. But what often happens is that, depending on how niche it is, people outside of that demo may not feel the need to consume it unless it is made palatable for them. So, for example, there's a joke that Blackish is a Black show that's made for white people. And that's not really an insult. Kenya Barris puts a whole bunch of little history clips and lessons in there for a reason. For y'all. That's not for us. We know that, most of us. But I do understand sometimes that if you don't feel like it's content for you, you just don't consume it, buy it, watch it. However, on the flip side, everybody who isn't white consumes a massive amount of content that was designed with the white experience in mind, right? I know I've said this a few times already, but it's central to the point. So today, as somebody who considers themselves a protector and someone who preserves Black culture, this was my offering to you, right? How can we bridge gaps? How can we work on our allyship through you guys having a better understanding of the Black experience, and not just the Black experience in terms of us being over policed, in terms of the education disparity, in terms of glass ceilings at work, in terms of, you know, bias about our hair, in terms of people thinking that we speak too aggressively, in terms of any of those things, right? Not even the Black experience in terms of how the world sees us, but the Black experience in terms of how we see the world. What I shared with you guys so far were a couple of suggestions in film, and I do have some more suggestions that I want to offer in terms of television, for just things that you may have watched before, without really looking at it as an opportunity to learn, right? So for example, again, Do the Right Thing is 21 years old. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of it. Some of you may even have seen it, but were you watching it as entertainment, or were you watching it as like, this was actually taking from real things that were happening in the streets of New York at that time, and it could almost be a biopic? I think that when you change the framing of how you're watching something, is definitely going to change your perspective of it. And, you know, I understand that there are very touchy conversations around what it means for non-Black people to interact with Black culture. And what I'm suggesting to you is miles away from appropriation. Appropriation is actually when you're using elements of Black culture without any context at all of where they came from, how they originated, what they mean to us, how we use them, what their significance is. What I'm actually suggesting is that you learn those things. And one of the ways you can learn those things is through art and entertainment. And also that it could help you, how can I say this? So we're keeping it 100 here, right? Right, exactly. Like the difference between friends and living single. So we're keeping it 100 and very transparent here today, right? So every Black person that you know at work acts a different way when there's no white people around. It doesn't mean completely different. It doesn't mean like there's a mask that comes off, but there is a relaxation, like a letting down of a little bit of a guard, of a little bit of a barrier when we're around what we call folk. And until you actually have seen that, you don't actually know Black people. So again, that is why my suggestion is that you do consume some Black content and actually listen to it for the voice and the perspective, and watch it for the voice and the perspective that it offers.